All right, now that Anna's done tweeting about this, we can get started. Welcome, everyone. I'm Jesse Heinzen, and I'm here with Kyle and Anna, and this is, so you have all this media, now what do you do with it? And I'd like to start out by thanking Anna for her tireless work with the video production coordination at this conference. One of our panelists, Nate Solas, wasn't able to attend the conference. As many of you probably know, he left his role at the Walker, and I wasn't able to find anyone else from the Walker to come in and join us. So I'm going to do a little bit more talking about some of our work at the Minnesota Historical Society as well, even though I didn't really want to talk about it because we're still trying to figure all of this out, just as a lot of people are. I wanted to start by asking how many people in the room are actively doing video production at their organization? Okay, a few. All right. Good. All right, so we're going to look at a couple example projects with ArtBabble and Conservation Reel, and I'll talk a little bit about our efforts at Minnesota Historical Society to try to figure out what to do with all this video and media content that we're producing and how to best present it to our end users online, particularly. So I'm going to hand it over to Kyle first, and he's going to talk about ArtBabble.
All right. So, how many people, by show of hands, know what ArtBabble is? Okay, quite a few. But really quick, I guess, just a quick summary of what it is. It's a website we created in 2009. I guess I can just move over. And at the Indianapolis Museum of Art. And the original idea was to bring together and make it easier to find video, somewhat for educational purpose, but also for just research or whatever your museum was putting out, to bring it to a centralized location to make it easier to find for educators, researchers, and even the general public. One of the things that we were looking at the time was that, museums were doing all different sorts of things to get video online, whether it was YouTube or Vimeo or any number of other hosted services, putting it on their own website and streaming it. But discovering that and kind of getting a sense for what exists from across the world, there was so much noise out there. We saw this opportunity to kind of create a place to bring it all together and make a centralized kind of way to discover this type of video. So that's the start, and like I said, it launched in 2009. I think we launched, there was 20 partners, different museums around the U.S. And internationally, actually, at launch. And then in 2012, this past winter, almost a year ago now, we did a redesign and kind of rethinking of ArtBabble in terms of how we did some of our video integrations and things. So now it's up to 57 partner institutions and is still growing today. So it's really exciting to see how it has grown over the years. The original ArtBabble, you said we put all of the video onto Amazon S3. We built a system that the institutions would log in. They would upload their video directly into ArtBabble. We'd process that video into a web-capable format depending on what they uploaded in, and then add it to the site. So the site was all, it all handled that. We used at the time some video encoding stuff where we'd actually on Amazon fire up a new instance every time someone uploaded video, process the video, and shut it off. So our costs, you can imagine, of hosting all of that video and processing it all as people upload it were quite large. We had some features that we initially added called notes, where at different time cues in the video, partners could insert content, text content, and they'd display alongside the video. So initially it was thought, as an educational resource, it allows the institution to provide some more context, maybe to the video, additional information. Those proved to be more difficult to actually get, and as almost a hindrance actually to get people to contribute video, because they were initially required to publish a video. You had to put in some extra content around it. So we changed pretty quickly to remove that requirement. And then what we found is that pretty much no videos had them. So it was like, well, why do we even have this feature? Which kind of leads into the new ArtBabble. We also had a kind of a workflow in place where all the videos were coming in, and we had to be approved for publication by the IMA staff that was managing ArtBabble. And it wasn't a, we want to make sure your content's okay. It was a, we want to make sure the metadata around it was okay. Is it tagged? Is it categorized? So that, you know, it's easy to find. It fits in the kind of categories that we were trying to build around the site, to group it with like-minded videos. And so we didn't want people just coming in and dumping their videos without that information, because that kind of defeats the purpose of ArtBabble and what we were trying to do. So, you know, it was pretty successful, but, you know, as I guess early last year, we decided that, you know, it kind of needed a bit of an update. It was looking a little bit dated, as, you know, trends in modern web design often change pretty quickly. You know, 3 years for a site to sit with very little changes was quite a long time. So we planned to do a redesign, and part of that was also a re-architecting of the site. We made it responsive because, as you know, from 2009 to now, mobile devices have become, you know, it just exploded. We were seeing a huge increase in the amount of traffic that we were getting, and we were using flash-based players, so you could not access it on an iPhone or an iPad. And so we obviously needed to get that upgraded. We also wanted to make the site responsive so that regardless of what device you're on, you can access all of that content. The second thing we did was looked at allowing YouTube and Vimeo embeds, and also Brightco, which some of our partners were using to deliver video. So instead of having to upload the videos to our server and then have them processed and thus store them, museums and other institutions were already uploading to YouTube. So we were able to just suck those videos in and have them embedded on the site instead of us hosting it. And yeah, like I said, we set it up so it could be auto imported. So an institution could associate their YouTube channel with us, and then as they publish new videos, we automatically pull that in. They were unpublished by default, and that way, if you're uploading all different kinds of content and you didn't necessarily want all of that on ArtBabble, you go into ArtBabble and tell it which ones you wanted published. Initially, when we launched the new ArtBabble, we still had the restriction in place that it had to be routed through the IMA before publishing, and basically at some point we decided that really wasn't worth the effort. Honestly, our partners were taking the time to do the metadata tagging, and we, as part of the refresh, we also limited the number of tags and categories that you could do, and really tried to structure that in a little smaller group, and so we made a lot of that required. So to actually publish a video, you had to put those there. So we used the software to kind of enforce what we were doing manually in the past. And then lastly, we did drop the notes support. Like I said, we were seeing that people just weren't doing it. They didn't have time to do it. And although we thought it was a great feature, it was just not really widely used. So this is what it looks like now. This is, if you have a mobile device here on the left, it would look like that. And then the main site on your desktop on the right, or an iPad, or some kind of other tablet. I guess I shouldn't say just iPads. I get stuck that way sometimes because that's what I use. But like I said, it's responsive, so it works on everything. And pretty much all of our partners switched to using the embed method. There are still a few that have uploaded some videos, and we're hosting them still, but it's I don't think it's more than a handful of videos at this point, because these partners were already doing that workflow as part of their daily media, or however often they were uploading videos. YouTube was a place where most people were putting it, and so us facilitating that and easing their workflow, they said, yes, we want to do that. So one of the other features that we added this round as well was the For Educators section, and this was an area to kind of offer insight on how this could be used in a classroom for educators, hence the name. And so it gives a little introductory text. And then we had educators from Ball State University in Indiana. And they worked with our educators at the staff of the IMA to put together kind of these sample lesson plans with different videos that had similar themes or subjects that could be taught around, and created these. We had done some work. The Ball brothers, actually, which is Ball State University, they have a foundation, and they have actually provided a lot of the funding for us to build ArtBabble over the years. And so working with them in this education part of thing was really important. And so we're trying to figure out how this section is going to evolve and continue to see it grow. We've thought about allowing users to kind of create these as well, but we haven't quite figured out how we want to do that yet. So we'll see if we add some more stuff around that going forward. As I mentioned as well, the taxonomies and the metadata that we use around the videos was updated with this update as well. So we went through and looked at what the partners had been adding, and there was a lot of duplication, some misspellings and things like that. We weren't really strict in that, making sure that if someone tagged something Monet with a capital M and a lowercase m, that they were the same. And so it was kind of a mess. So we went through the process at the IMA of going through and condensing those, merging terms together that were similar or had the same meaning, and removing terms that just weren't part of the vocabulary that we wanted to use on the site. So we really kind of pared things back. The categories that you see listed here are what we ended up with, and so on the main menu, you can dive in through each of those categories. That basically is how we decided would be our main entry point into discovery of video, was through these different categories. So across the top, the main menu of the site has all of those different categories with subterms listed there as well. When you hover them, you get these pop-ups, and it allows people to dive into what they might be interested in. You can also do searching, and that will search across all these taxonomies as well. So it gives people a way of doing a little bit more discovery around some of this. So just some stats on the site. Right now we've got about 3,000 videos that we've sucked in, like I said, mostly from YouTube at this point. And there's been 3 million page views since 2009. And now 1.3 million visitors. So it's not huge numbers, but it's extra eyeballs on all the video content that you're already putting somewhere else. And so it's been really, I think the heaviest usage we've seen is in schools and with educators. We did some surveys in the past, and that was like that one of the audiences we were really targeting, and that has been a big pickup for our site. And so we're trying to figure out ways that we can market out to that a little bit more too, and make sure that the reach is getting where we want it to go. Again, as part of the rebuild too, that move to YouTube, it saves us about $100 a month. So we were, like I said, hosting all that video on Amazon. The storage cost of that and the bandwidth cost of getting that out to all the users, it was roughly in the $100 range a month. We had a lot less videos too, though. I think we had, before the launch, it was probably closer to the 2,000 range, maybe even less than that. And since we redid the launch, we added a bunch of new partners. Because the workflow was so much easier for people, we were able to ramp up and add people faster than getting them on board with the old platform. So the $100 a month was a huge deal for us, just in terms of our budget and maintaining the project and making sure that it wasn't putting too much pressure on us to do something differently. So.
All right.
Oh, that's me. Hi, my name is Anna Chiaretta Lavatelli. I work with Balboa Park Online Collaborative in San Diego, California. And I'm just going to introduce the two projects. I'll get into more depth after Jesse gives some more background. So I primarily work with the San Diego Museum of Art in Balboa Park, and that's in production of video content. We created their website, and do a lot of digital interactives for them. And one of the projects I did was get them onto iTunes U. And so I'm going to give you a little tour towards the end of our talk of iTunes U, the procedures to get onto iTunes U, how the back end works, and ways of organizing your content on iTunes U. Everyone does it a little differently, and it's a platform that was really designed for universities. So there's a lot of potential that's not been monopolized on or capitalized on in the feature sets. So it's like there are courses and all these ways of adding additional users, and it has a lot of potential for educators. And that's something I've been strategizing with the San Diego Museum of Art, but I'll give you like sort of the introductory, like how to get yourself in there, because it's a lot more attractive than the kind of patchwork Drupal video library you see in the background. I'm not showing that because I'm proud of it. So it was a workaround, especially because it's deeply buried in the menu structure, because they have this they basically want so much content on their website. There's this very complex menu structure, and a lot of visitors have been having trouble finding the video library. And so we wanted to find another way to share the content, as well as give the audio tours more play time. So we've also put our audio tours on iTunes U. The other project that I'm going to talk about is Conservation Reel. This is a website developed on the ArtBabble platform, and so it was a collaboration between the IMA. We had a lot of fun phone calls with Kyle, getting ourselves moved from the first version of ArtBabble to the new version, because they released that partway through the Conservation Reel project, and because of all these new features that Kyle was describing, including responsive design and especially, most of all, the YouTube embedding, we threw the old site out the window and started from scratch, working with the same core designs. It's a Crest Foundation funded project, and so we've gotten through phase one. We've produced a little bit of content. We've got the website up and running. If you know conservators who would want to be members, what's cool is we modified it so it's not just institutional partners, it's also individuals. So I'll get into more details of how we sort of modified sort of the conceptual nature of ArtBabble to adapt to a professional context of maybe your media isn't for the general public and maybe it's for individuals. So I'll let Jesse introduce his stuff.
Okay. So like I said before, I originally wasn't going to talk much about our website because we're still trying to figure this all out in terms of how do we best put our media content that we're producing more and more and more of these days and display it and organize it so that the people who are going to consume it can find it. What I will do, though, later is to look at talk about some of the YouTube features that we are utilizing and trying to incorporate as we're in the midst of a major web redesign. But speaking of YouTube, we wanted to say that I think collectively with all of these projects, we're basically saying use YouTube as much as you can, and you can use it for almost everything. And there's a few examples that we'll hit on in a little bit of where it might not work for you, but these are just some of the reasons. It's free. You can embed it different places. You can do public and unlisted, and captions, which are a big deal for most of us because we're required by ADA to provide captions for video content. So, Kyle,
okay.
Talk about the.
Okay, so yeah, I wanted to go into a little bit more about ArtBabble and YouTube and how we came to the idea of wanting to use this. I thought I would tell a little story to kind of liven things up a little bit because it's the end of the conference and we're all probably tired. And so it started off back in high school. It was a little bit of a childhood romance, but as things come and go, ArtBabble and YouTube kind of went their own ways. We decided ArtBabble wanted to do a liberal arts college degree. YouTube wanted a more business degree. So they went to different universities, never thinking they'd see each other again. But as fate would have it, they decided to come back together. And they met at their 10-year high school reunion after a lot of investigation into each of their own products and growing. And they decided, you know what, we could be great together. And so ArtBabble and YouTube went on long walks on the beach. They held hands. They thought, this is great. Let's get married. And so they decided that they would get married, and then they had a baby. And that was ArtBabble too, and it was using YouTube. So that's my story for today. So all kidding aside, we, at the IMA, like I said, one of the big things we wanted to do was streamline workflows. Most of the partners were already putting their video on YouTube, and so we were thinking, one of the big hindrances for a lot of partners that we were trying to onboard new people was that they didn't want to have to upload to one more site. And so, having the ability to just pull their videos in a process that they're already using was a big way for us to grow the number of partners that were on ArtBabble and increase the amount of video. And doing the auto importing. So that was a huge thing. I think probably the one drawback that I should have put on a slide was, we thought a lot about, since educational content is what we're targeting, is this going to be a problem in schools because of the YouTube blocking and things like that? And after doing some talking with educators and doing some outreach around Indianapolis, we were able to figure out, that those restrictions have been loosening a little bit, and that schools, at least some schools that we talked to, were figuring out ways to get around blocking all of YouTube. And so there are still some cases where probably we limited who can, the amount of use it could get in a classroom. But in the end, we thought it was the right choice to get as much content in there as possible and to make it easier for everybody to use. From a technical standpoint, like I said, it decreased our hosting costs. The amount of the server we were using is much less powerful. We were using, like I said, servers to encode the video after it was uploaded and get it into the right format so we could use it for the way we were streaming it. The storage cost was in itself over $100 a month in savings. I think our total bill for hosting ArtBabble, I was just looking that up here, I think it's roughly $100 a month, maybe a little bit less than that. Even our main website's kind of mixed in, so it's hard for me to be 100% accurate on it, but it's pretty cheap for us to host that up on Amazon. Before we did all this, it was probably closer to the $300 a month range with the more powerful server, the encoding stuff that we were doing, and also the additional storage. So that was a big part of it. It made it much simpler too to maintain. The way we were doing it, one of the nice things about Amazon now, they actually you can do video encoding. They have a service for it, so that didn't exist when we created ArtBabble. So we had to use some different libraries and things that, we were able to find some things that did it, but it added a lot of complexity to the whole setup and how we managed all of that video. So we're basically offloading that complexity onto YouTube and letting them manage it because they're very good at it, and we don't have to maintain that part of the application anymore. We do still offer hosted video on ArtBabble, though. So if a partner comes to us and they don't want to put stuff on YouTube or they don't have a solution on their end for getting that out there, we can still host it. But we did simplify that part as well. So instead of uploading the video to our website and then using Amazon to do the transcoding and like we were doing it in the past, we are using a service called Zencoder, and we upload the file, send it off to that service, it brings it, then when it's done, it lets us know, and we download that file back to our server and store it on S3. So we are still hosting some video, but it's so small. Our cost per month is, I think, $25 is what we for storage right now. And that includes what we use for our main website at the IMA. So I think the actual video part of that is probably more like less than 10. So again, we shortened that, the workflows around it. We decreased the amount of complexity in our technology, and overall it's made it a much easier system to maintain going forward.
Oh, that's me. Hi. It's hard to tweet and present at the same time. So stemming off of everything Kyle just said, basically we learned all about all these features, and we realized this is what we need. This is how we're going to create a sustainable resource, because one of the key missions of Conservation Reel was to make something that would survive on its own. The Crest Foundation gave us one grant. They weren't going to continue to fund this project, not because they didn't love it, and they don't love it, but because they expected us to create something that would be sustainable on its own. So when we saw what they were doing with the new ArtBabble and the YouTube features, we said, okay, this is something we really need to look into. So I think we sent Mr. Chris Borkowski to Kyle to have some conversations, look at the code, make sure that we weren't getting in over our head. We probably did anyway, get in over our head, that is. And so what I'm going to get into the details of what we love about YouTube in a second. But first, the modifications we did to the Babble platform, because this panel is about where to put media, and I wanted to get into this idea of maybe some of your media isn't for everyone, and it requires a specific kind of context. So one of the things we wanted to modify to the Babble platform was making it open access, and so we set it up so that you right now could make an account, and it would automatically populate the contributors section, because we want individuals and institutions to participate in this, so that individual conservators can put up documentation, record a video question, record a video response, give conservators the power to control how this resource grows, so that they can dictate what kind of content they need. This also means that the content auto-publishes itself. You don't need to notify anyone. As soon as you upload a video, it's published, and then it's up to you if you want to unpublish it, delete it, hide it. And so it's really about putting control into the hands of the users. The other thing we added was a library node, which was another content type that would enable people to upload slide shares, documents. We used the Google Doc viewer, and so because it was a Drupal-based site, we were able to really quickly, easily add a lot of these features. And then the most important to me was the how-to section of the site, which and I realized I meant to be going through these slides, but I'll do, the how-to section is these sort of silly little doodles of different types of equipment. There's lists, equipment lists of model numbers, and different technical approaches to production. So this is how you do a presentation screen capture, which I, in theory could start up QuickTime right now and record what I'm presenting. And how to use a small camera, how to use your iPhone to capture, and then also different modes of capture. So that's a section that I was personally very excited about. The other thing we had to do, of course, was adjust the taxonomies to be conservation oriented. It's not a survey of artworks that are being talked about. It's conservation techniques. So we looked to AIC and constructed the categories based on AIC's categories of conservation work, so that it's documentation, education, examination, preventive conservation, research, and treatment. We also added type, which I believe ArtBabble had built into it, which is a type of video, and we sort of modified those to make people feel more enabled in informal content, so that there's content types such as case study, conference lecture, interview, so that you sort of contextualize your video in a way that sort of makes you feel more comfortable sharing it. Like, this is just a question. I'm putting it in the question category. And then the contributors, this auto-populates as soon as you make an account. So I go in occasionally and clean up in case multiple people from the same organization have made accounts, and I can merge them. And then the tags feature, which was originally part of ArtBabble, which auto-populates as people tag their videos. So these terms are the terms that apply to the videos that have been uploaded. The education content, or content type that Kyle talked about, what we did was a sneaky little renaming of the content type. So we took, this is your like classroom content type to make lesson plans, and we turned it into series because that was the quickest way to make it a possibility for the user to create sets of videos. And so you can make a series of videos. So you can pull together a series of videos on Italian painting, or in this case, I put together a collection of videos that are the collaboration of the Balboa Art Conservation Center and the San Diego Museum of Art. So the library looks like this. It's just a list, and then there's little icons to identify what kind of content it is, whether it's a presentation or just a link to another site. And these all come up in the search field as well. And so this is a workshop I gave at Buffalo State to the conservation students in the program there. And so there's my slide share, and then you can sort of see the top of the Google Doc viewer below that, which was my notes for my slide share. So this is the create new account. We did add a little bit more so that the affiliation is what populates the contributors page. We also had to add a CAPTCHA so that, you know, not everyone and their Russian cousin had an account. And then this is the how-to. So now I want to get into why YouTube was so exciting for me. The public and unlisted options. It enables conservators to set up a YouTube account, upload their videos, and maybe only put them as unlisted so they're not as findable to the general public, and they're only viewable in the context of Conservation Rail. That was really cool to me. The most important thing was making this resource something accessible to people around the world. So captions, transcription, and translation was critical to the success of the project for us. It's an incredibly complicated thing to build from scratch, captions, transcription, and translation. So when we realized how robust YouTube's captioning transcription functions were and the translation functions, we realized, oh, we got to do this. This is, no matter how much work it takes us to adapt the new ArtBabble to our needs, it was going to be worth it. And then the other thing was the ease of content creation, being able to use Capture Now, use Google Hangouts to, you know, set up panel discussions between members of conservation communities across the board, or maybe conservators with registrars and collections care professionals, maybe museum professionals and conservators, because we see the website as a resource that's not just for the conservation community. That's our core and our you know, the heart of the project, but it's also something for collections care professionals, small museums, registrars, and the interested general public. These things will trickle down, or as I think Susan Chun, the chair of the advisory committee, says, you know, they will rise above to the public. So to sort of have a spirit of openness. So I'm gonna squeak out of here into YouTube. So I'm pulling up this video specifically because, whoa, Safari, not playing nice. That's fine. We can see what I'm up to by here. So I can kind of see. Is that auto? Okay. So what they have are there are these auto transcriptions, right, where it like completely misinterprets what you wrote. Which are always kind of depressing. And then what you can do is either pay for casting words or get a bunch of interns that type quickly and upload a text file that's the proper transcript. In this case, we use casting words. Castingwords.com is really cheap. If you're not in a rush, it's especially cheap. If you're in a rush, it's a little more expensive. But when you're dealing with 1-minute videos, it's $1 a minute. So, you know, like what, you got a 10-minute video, $10, worth it. That's how we got this transcription. All I had to do was upload a text file. And it uses the auto captioning to place your text. So you don't need to do those crazy fancy transcript files anymore. So that's really, really cool. The other thing that's cool is we can, what does that say?
Transcribe and sync.
Oh, request translation. This is where your foreign interns come in handy. So there are set languages that you can select from, And then what you do is say, okay, we're going to take the English track. We want it translated to French. And then we go next. And it eventually loads. So you can pay a stupid amount of money to have some professional do it. Or, no thanks, I'll translate it myself. Or I'll send it to an intern. So let's see, this is really hard to see. Okay, so if I click on this, yeah, there's a way. Okay, so then if you click this, you can go in and edit their auto translate. So the idea is you can invite your, happen to be bilingual French-speaking intern to go in and edit these. So they're not having to translate from scratch. They're just going in and fixing the insane grammar or, mistranslated word. So it speeds up that process a lot. And so we're experimenting with having some of these translated by some European conservation interns with one of our advisory committee partners, Till Holger Berschart. So this potential alone was just like, oh my God, we can outsource translation and then have it captioned. So that's this was the most exciting thing for me on YouTube, and now you know how to use it. So back to the PowerPoint. So now Jesse's going to tell you about optimizing embedded video.
Okay, excellent. Well, Kyle, I'm glad you brought up the school thing, because that was actually one of the main considerations when we decided we were doing kind of analysis of all the different ways to deliver video content at MNHS, and we were afraid of YouTube before that reason, and we actually did a bunch of school surveys with some of our partner teachers and things like that, and it actually turns out that it's really not as big of an issue as it used to be. So just to echo that, most people said in the survey that they could, even if YouTube was still blocked in their school, they had some workaround. They had some way to get around it. So we decided, okay, we're going to go with YouTube for all of our video delivery that we can for all of our video online. So since then, we've been working on how to optimize that and this is our little string that we add on the end of all the YouTube embeds now. And not all of them are done, but basically the difference is the top row of videos versus the bottom row of videos here. So we're hiding the info. We're making sure that the way this stuff is presented looks clean, looks the best it can to the user. So and then the other one of those pieces actually prevents the embedded video from showing related videos at the end, because we found that if you're embedding the video in a site that has all the context around it and then all these other related videos pop up at the end, it's very confusing, especially if on your YouTube channel this stuff is organized in a playlist. It's just going to keep playing all the subsequent videos, which can get very confusing very quickly. So here's an example of what this looks like on one of our more recent pages. And the other piece to this is using a custom thumbnail. So instead of doing introduction titles baked into the video anymore, we're just using the custom thumbnail feature in YouTube to present our title for the program. So when you click play, it goes right into the content, and we don't have to worry about updating or changing any of that title information, so that we can design our own basically title pages and run that through with our marketing people to make sure that everything looks like everything else on the site, and go from there. And you were talking about description and tags earlier. So much like how the IMA had to deal with that for ArtBabble, I mean, we kind of have that same issue within our own institution. So I think one of the issues with description and tags is you have to really figure out in your own organization whose responsibility is it to provide that content. So right now, for us, it's coming from the program, it's coming from marketing, it's also coming from partly from our media group. So there's a lot of different people kind of in the mix. We have our program and our marketing people writing the description and tags. We're producing the video and uploading it, and then our web group is embedding it on whatever site. So there's a lot of communication and coordination that has to happen to make sure that all these steps are done and in order before the video goes live. And then just to echo what you were saying about captioning, I'm sort of a perfectionist when it comes to this stuff, so taking it a step further, we actually do use that auto match feature, but then we pull it back down and edit our captions to fit within the guidelines for ADA, which is, like 32 character max per line, because YouTube just kind of throws the thing up and you've got sometimes sentences and double lines on one page at a time, even if you upload your own caption file. So we go back in and even edit that further with a caption software and really align all those things and then proofread everything and make sure it's spelling names correctly and things like that.
Fancy.
But again, interns are great for that stuff. And then we also, because of the unlisted features, we also use YouTube for all of our project proofing and internal use. So this is like a screenshot of our channel. There's only one public video in this whole pile right here, because a lot of this stuff is just versions of videos we're sending around to people to proof or do draft proofing and things like that. Or if they're internal programs like staff forums that we put up, then we can just embed that link somewhere on our internal site that the public never sees on the YouTube channel. And live events. So for doing things like staff forums or other live broadcasts, the link to YouTube now is actually really great. So we can set up a live event. We use a product called Wirecast to record and do the live mixing with cameras and laptop feeds and things like that. And it immediately goes up on YouTube, and when the program's done, the video's posted. And I think you guys have been doing that here, right? Mm-hmm. With the webcast?
Totally.
And then you can go back in and edit that file after the fact if you need to lop off a little bit at the beginning or end. And the other powerful thing I think with YouTube is the analytics. You can really drill down and see who's watching your video and how they're getting to it, particularly if you're embedding it on sites. I mean, one of the recent projects we did was a series of field trip videos for all of our historic sites, introducing students to the field trip experience for that site. So, the concept from the beginning was we want teachers to use this field trip video before they bring their students to the site. And what we found on some of those cases is that people were actually viewing it just on the YouTube watch page. So most likely they're not looking at it embedded on our site, so they're probably not using it the way we wanted them to use it in the first place. But at least they're watching it. So we are basically saying use YouTube for everything except when you can't. And there's still a few instances in our organization, and I think in a lot of organizations, where YouTube isn't going to work. So our collections management system does not deal with YouTube. So for all of our video that's actually in our collection, we still have to host that ourselves and put up those MP4 files. Digital asset management systems are also probably the same.
Yeah, and I think one thing to reiterate here is, YouTube is not an archival platform, so don't just put it on YouTube and then delete.
Right.
Because, Google's a company that, someday YouTube might not exist. It's nice to have as a secondary backup. If something catastrophic happened to your local one, if you had it on YouTube, you could go grab it, which is nice. But keeping that raw storage and something more intended for an archival purpose, YouTube is not that. So definitely don't want to use it for that.
And we're also doing some stuff now with curriculum projects where we want to put some of our paid curriculum behind a subscription wall. We could use YouTube to deliver that video because it's behind a subscription wall, but it's still a public forum. So if anyone, even if it's an unlisted link, it can still be shared. So if we want to protect that video and make it only available to people who subscribe, then we have to use a different platform for delivering that. And then, of course, there's raw material. So all of the content that actually goes into producing these final products does not belong on YouTube. So just a little bit about that. I mean, so at the Historical Society, we have a 6-person production team just for multimedia. So we're in a situation where we have a video SAN just for production. We've got about 100 terabytes of storage down in our server room and 5 workstations connected to that via fiber. We have an independent backup system on LTO. So that's kind of like the high end of video production on the storage side. And Anna?
I was just tweeting that I'm so jealous. So we work for small museums, and sometimes it's one-off projects. Sometimes it's San Diego Museum of Art, where we regularly produce content, but it's not that much. It's like maybe a terabyte a year. And so we generally stick to working off of the G-RAID little independent hard drives through FireWire 800. It's not ideal. I would much rather have Jesse's situation, especially because I'm starting to get more interns that are smart enough to edit. They're fabulous. And so instead what we do is we have one system that we just sort of share time at. So it's like, this is Adriana's day to edit. This is Drew's day to edit. And we just cycle through so we can all work on our projects. And so we have 3 of these stacked right now on top of our 8-core Mac Pro, not the cylinder thingy they're coming out with. So they look very nice on top of it. But those are our work drives. They're pretty solid. You still are going to have to account for replacing them every couple years. And so in the long run, it would be more affordable for us to work off of a SAN, but we just don't have the money in place to advance purchase that. We do for backup. We do use a NAS for the San Diego Museum of Art, so that they can access their files. So just to, I wanted to grab these slides from a presentation. I did it like a year and a half ago, some time ago. And so this is just to look at file sizes, so that you can really realize how quickly your space disappears, and also why we do not archive to DNx HD or ProRes, because they're massive files. Instead, we do full-size H.264s, and we just keep all the raw footage. So what it comes down to is you shoot something that's an hour and a half, 16 gigabytes of flash, you'd end up with 100 gigabyte DNx HD versus a 30 gigabyte unlimited H.264. So we lean towards the 30 gigabyte file. So it's not technically an archive. It's not technically the best we could do, but it's very functional and the quality's fine. For backup, we got piles of hard drives. Those are not my hard drives. They're much prettier looking, but I wanted to really accent how sad it is to just have piles of hard drives. I also am a strong believer in 3 copies, 1 working copy, 2 backups in at least 2 locations. So our 3rd backup is Backblaze. If you're a small organization and you have 1 edit bay, get a personal Backblaze account. It's $100 up front for 2 years. So that's basically $4 a month. Totally worth it. The only time it gets expensive is when you need your data back because you lost everything, in which case it's about $200 to get everything sent to you on a hard drive. Unless you're like me. The thing about Backblaze is it's unlimited. So I have my stack of G-RAID 4 terabyte hard drives, and then I have 4 3 terabyte hard drives inside the tower. So that's like a lot of terabytes. And because Backblaze is unlimited, Backblaze, all those are backing up. So I have a lot of terabytes in the cloud. So if I lost all my hard drives at once, like if there was a fire, I would have to pay a lot of money to get it all back. So I'm working on another location. And we also we have an LTO tape backup system now, because IT stopped using it, and so I'm taking it over. And so those are, the tape backup is actually, I mean, it's hilarious that we've like spent all this time getting off of tape only to go back to tape. And I think
We
you
use-
actually
we
cited
use
that.
tape.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
use tape for backup still.
It's archival, man. I mean, it's tape. It's not going anywhere. It's like solid. Not like a hard drive. I kicked one of our hard drives off the table. My assistant won't let me near the edit computer lately because I keep knocking hard drives off the table because I don't know. I just anyways, Italian I gesture. It was gone. And so we had to like go buy another hard drive and like redo our backup and be all paranoid and reopen all the files. Because that's the other thing. You got to check your files. Check your backup. Don't just assume because you copied the files, everything's cool. You got to go on there and open up your project file and make sure it's functioning. Gosh, that sounds so scolding. Okay, so iTunes U, real quick. Who's super curious about iTunes U so I know how fast to go? Because I'll burn through it super fast. Interest in iTunes U. Gauging. Okay, cool. Enough. I will not rush. I will give it due attention. So it's weird, but it's kind of good. So getting started, applying to be on iTunes U, I've had a lot of people contact me saying, how did you get San Diego Museum of Art onto iTunes U? And I was like, I don't know. I applied and they put us on. It took a couple weeks. But the key thing, I really read thoroughly the manuals and the all the text on iTunes U because things move like molasses at art museums typically. So I had a lot of time to really make sure I understood the resource completely and understood its goals so that I could write a really good application. So 3 things that I think are most important that we were really attentive to in our application was, how is your institution relevant to scholarly education communities? It's a resource for educators. You gotta contextualize yourself. So talk about the fact that you do scholarly lectures and that you're bringing people in to talk and that's what you're gonna put on there. That you produce content on a regular basis. You're not just gonna one-off dump 10 files on there and call it a day. That you're regularly producing this type of content so that there's a need for having you on iTunes U, that you're going to use this resource. You're not going to forget about it like your podcast. I forgot about our podcast. So content should be educational and identify your audiences. It's not arbitrary, right? Like think about identifying who you're speaking to, that, you know, we're going to do audio tours for the general public, but that we also produce lectures that are more scholarly oriented. And we're also going to put up our family-friendly kids videos so that there's some K through 12 content. So there's a few different ways you can put content on iTunes U. Sound only, where it's basically a podcast. This is how a lot of the universities put content on. Most universities have podcasting built into the lecture halls, at least the major ones. I know UCSD podcasts everything they produce. Or every lecture that happens. Not the TAs, though. We all know they're useless. Well, I was a TA. So sound and I was way more useful. Sound and PDF of slides is another option. So these would be 2 lines in your iTunes U channel. So you'd have an audio file that somebody would have to click to play on. And this is the thing that's like awkward. PDF downloads are weird. You don't get any notice of where it goes, and most people can't find it. And it just goes into your iTunes, and you've got to like go to your iTunes U folder in your iTunes, and then you're like, oh shit, I downloaded the PDF 30 times because I thought it wasn't working. So they've got to like have something pop up that says, you know, and I'm sure there's like 300 requests for this, and Apple's like, yeah, that's nice. So the last way, which is the way we use it the most, is video. Although it's kind of bonkers that they really haven't gotten with the program on the resolution quality factor. Like the limitations, like the specs that they have. I mean, I need to check because they're constantly updating iTunes U lately, so I think they're working on it. But last I checked, it was like, 360. So like the lowest quality you get on YouTube. It was really sad. So it's, but it's accessible. So organizing the content, we do it, we group by exhibition. Sometimes we also group by content type. Like we have a series called Art Stops. They're 15-minute in-gallery lectures. So we have a channel for Art Stops. We do audio tours, and then you can also do pages to organize thematic. So like this is stuff in the permanent collection. These are special exhibitions. So you can organize. The analytics are awesome. I'll show you a screen grab of that in a second. Oh, and a note when I show you the thing I'm about to show you. Why is the... it's random. That was an unfinished slide. So that's what it looks like on the desktop. What's cool is it works on all different kinds of mobile devices. I'll tweet out the link to San Diego Museum of Art's iTunes U so you can see what I did and ask me questions as to why I did what I did, because maybe there's no logic. Why Human Beast is popping up in What's New? I don't know. It's an exhibition from like a year and a half ago. So it's weird. That's why I said it's good, but it's weird. Like there's things it does and you're like, why? So if I click on Human Beast, you can see this is just an audio tour. We like to identify in the title what people are, so that people don't get turned off by not knowing what they're getting themselves into. We work with the graphics department there. I'm not a big fan. The look is kind of... I like the look of the page, but the individual covers, because there's a different look and feel for every exhibition. If you look at some other institutions, they have a really like regular style or a mark. The problem with the San Diego Museum of Art is their logo can only be like X size. There's no abbreviation for it, and so you can't put it on a 600 by 600 pixel album cover because that breaks the rules. Anyways, it's annoying. Open University has really nice branding. You can also, have white versus dark. There's all these little presets you can select so that things match the mood. So this is a list of videos. It's just 3 videos, but it's kind of nice that, you can organize stuff by content. When you watch it in video in iTunes U, it pops up inside the player. They have really thorough documentation for graphics requirements, marketing requirements. So I just sent this manual to the graphic designer at the museum, and they gave me files. You can customize the look of it so that your page looks all nice. This is where you customize the pages. This is what the back end looks like, so you can see this menu structure system. Reports, collections, courses, we don't use at all. This is the thing that I was mentioning I'd like to start using for the educators, because they create courses for classroom, and this would be a great place to put that content. We host everything on the iTunes U Apple host. Anyway, it's all Apple hosted, but there is a Drupal plugin that I'm really curious about checking out, so that way we could have the museum populate these and I don't have to go in and do it myself. Courses, they're empty because we don't do them. So the statistics are beautiful. You can customize it by day, by week, by month, by year, by years, and you get to see who's watching it streaming, who's downloading, how many views you're getting. And I'm going to jump out to Safari. Whoops, that's not Safari, that's QuickTime. It's over there. There it is. So you get all kinds of data that is really fun. You're like, why do we get this spike? What happened that day? And you can look at the calendar. You can also see what your most popular series are, your most popular collections, most popular individual items. Juan Sanchez Cotan, it's like the most exciting painting in their collection, not surprised. And then you can see where people are viewing from. And all this can then be controlled by a date range. You can also get into the details where you can look at individual items over different spans. It's just like Google Analytics in terms of the complexity you can get into. And so it's really nice that they do that because, like I said, we never even advertised that this happened. It was just like suddenly one day we were on iTunes U and we kept dumping stuff there. And I'm like, hey, marketing department, look at how many people are there. Like, let's advertise this. Let's actually like step it up and start creating content specifically for it. So that's another place you can put stuff.
All right. So then the question with that is, what's the difference between iTunes U and
A
podcast?
Oh, right. I have to answer that. So iTunes U allows you to organize content into collections. It's also put into a context that's specifically scholarly educational. We have the use of a podcast for doing longer programming that's more like 10 to 15 minutes on a monthly basis that's organized by theme. And so the cool thing about podcasts, so putting an image with it, and then you also are able to put it in your website because podcasts are RSS based, so that you can have it live in the context of your website as well as on iTunes, so that people can subscribe to it and have it auto download. I'm going to make an audio note to the future listeners of this event. Tim Svivonius may have presented on this in the past.
All right, so we're pretty much wrapped up with this part of the presentation. I mean, I guess the other thing we wanted to remind everybody is, who are you producing this content for, and make sure that you have a clear audience and goals and all of that good stuff before you just pepper your site with a bunch of video. One question I wanted to throw out before we open it up to questions is this whole idea of aggregating content versus kind of putting it in places where is relevant in context. So the idea of like a channel or a page that's specifically aggregated by media type. What do you guys think about that?
Can I talk? I have an immediate thought. I don't know if anyone's ever been in a YouTube K-hole. I usually hit one every 2 days. But what's really cool is I can go into an ArtBabble K-hole. And so basically it's that idea, if you aggregate the content and you have, the population of like, oh, I'll click on this tag because that's really cool. And then you watch another video and then you're like, oh, that's really cool. And then it's like 5 hours later. And I think aggregating content is so great for that because you can sort of just give people the option to dive in to the pool. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, that's really the goal of ArtBabble, is to allow people to discover this across, YouTube is such a big pool, ocean, whatever you want to call it. It's the universe, I guess, of video, right? There's so much on there. If you're on one museum's YouTube channel, there's probably a lot of great content there, but there might be a bunch of related videos that another museum is putting out that YouTube might not know how to relate those, so you never see that even when you get to the related videos on YouTube. And so, as great as it is, having ArtBabble as a way to bring that all together really provides a lot of nice context, I guess, in relationships around different videos that might not exist anywhere else. And that's always been kind of the goal, is to, realize that, no one institution is probably the arbiter of knowledge on one single topic, and that multiple institutions are providing this information, and if we can tie that together so that people can find it easier, then we're doing a good job. And so I 100% agree that bringing it together in whatever way possible has been a really great thing. And we've got 3 million page views, I guess, so somebody's using it.
Thank you.